Hey, folks. Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. It is Monday. We are in the month of June right now, and it promises to be a long, hot summer in the world's most volatile and chaotic region, the Middle East, and it's just beginning. And we shall see what is about to happen, number one, in Gaza, number two, obviously, in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah, and number three, Syria. Yes, Syria. Remember, that is a crucial part of that Iranian-backed ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides. And we've got some major news out of Syria, folks. Overnight, a pretty serious Israeli airstrike in the second largest city in Syria. That would be Aleppo, Syria, to the north. Pretty serious, I should say, second most significant behind Damascus city, Aleppo. Pretty serious strike there. 16 people killed. These are members of Iranian-backed militias, including one actual Iranian Revolutionary Guards military advisor among the dead, reportedly. So major news out of Aleppo. We're going to dig into that. Also, a Hamas suicide bombing plot foiled by Israel's Shin Bet intelligence service. But here's the interesting thing, folks. The plot originated in Turkey. Yes, Turkey. Hamas members operating, I presume, freely on Turkish soil were behind this plot. Hey, we've been telling you here over the past several months that under the radical rule of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish tyrant, Turkey today, a NATO member still, is more like NATO in name only. So we're going to break that down as well. Turkey becoming a major, major problem under Erdogan's rule. And you're seeing some of the most radical anti-Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric in the world this side of Iran coming out of Turkey right now, courtesy of Erdogan. So we're going to break down this major strike in Syria and the implications there, this Hamas suicide bombing plot with a Turkish twist, and then this call for an immediate ceasefire by the Biden administration. Now, this happened late on Friday afternoon before we went into the weekend. Joe Biden saying this war needs to end now. It's time to just end Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza. Last I checked, Israel was a sovereign nation, and Israel can make its own decisions for its own defense. Thank you very much. This would be the equivalent of Israel when the U.S. was fighting, say, the Taliban in Afghanistan, for Prime Minister Netanyahu to get up and say, or whoever, Sharon at the time, to get up and say, you know what? This war, the U.S. was attacked, not the other way around. Just as Israel was attacked by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, the U.S. was attacked by al-Qaeda terrorists, harbored and supported by the Taliban in Afghanistan. But you know what? We recognize it was a horrible day for you, but this war needs to end now. There needs to be a ceasefire that would keep Hamas alive to fight another day. That's where we're at right now, folks. And that's what the Biden administration is saying. And the interesting wrinkle here is the Biden administration is saying, well, look, this was an Israeli proposal. It wasn't us. This is what Israel wants, and we're just kind of releasing it to the world because it's what we want too. It's what we wanted since October 7th. Folks, if the Biden administration had its way, Israel would have never gone into Gaza at all. There would have been some airstrikes, and that would be that. But Israel had other plans, and for good reason. Israel went into Gaza with the stated goal of destroying Hamas so that it can never rear its demonic, violent, evil head ever again. And hurt Israel in that way ever again. And that was the right call. But now, folks, where is this going? We've had a bit of a stall. Now Israel has been advancing deeper into Rafah, which is the last stronghold, the last bastion of Hamas in southern Gaza along the Egypt border. But the call's obviously increasing for a ceasefire. And there are more and more protests within Israel, hostage families. And look, everyone wants the hostages home. So where is this all heading? What do you think? I'd like to get your comments here. Hey, we have a very active chat right now here on the channel, on the live stream. So let me know what you think. Where is this going? Does Israel blow off the Biden administration and say, you know what, we're going to finish the job too soon for ceasefire talk? I want to dig into that a little further. We've got some direct quotes from Benjamin Netanyahu that he made just today, So a lot going on, needless to say. And by the way, there are major fires. Talk about prayer and the need for prayer. And we've got prayer warriors on this channel. There are major fires raging in northern Israel right now as a result of yet another massive Hezbollah rocket barrage. This time it hit the Golan Heights, one of my favorite areas in all of Israel. Folks, I say all this to say that this is the most difficult time for Israel since it was miraculously reborn in 1948. That's without a doubt. And Israel's getting hit from all sides, and Hezbollah, southern Lebanon, is one of those sides. We've got, I don't know, 60,000 at least residents of the north evacuated from northern Israel, and we've got tens of thousands still evacuated from southern Israel along the Gaza border. That's why I want to tell you about our sponsor for today's live stream, my good friends at Magen David Adom. Now, ever since October 7th and October 8th, by the way, October 7th, Hamas launched attacks. October 8th, it was Hezbollah. Again, unilaterally, both of these Iran-backed terror organizations launching attacks against Israel. Well, Magen David Adom is an organization we're proud to partner with here on the channel. Look, it is in a time of Israel's greatest need, as I said, Magen David Adom is literally on the front lines. Get these numbers, folks. It's Israel's emergency medical system. 35,000 paramedics, EMTs, and first responders. They dispatch every ambulance in Israel. They answer every emergency medical call in Israel. This is what Magen David Adom does. On the front lines every day. Some more numbers for you to show you the difference they're having. It's a mostly volunteer force. And since October 7th, we've seen 30 paramedics and EMTs killed in this war, 17 ambulances destroyed. That's Magen David Adom. Folks, this is a mostly volunteer force. They're putting their lives on the line in defense of Israel. When you're in Israel, you see the Magen David Adom vehicles everywhere. They are literally on the front lines doing God's work for such a time as this. It is SaveLivesIsrael.com. SaveLivesIsrael.com to support just the incredible, brave work of Magen David Adom. Again, 30 paramedics and EMTs killed, 17 ambulances destroyed. It is almost exclusively funded by donors, Magen David Adom, and it's a mostly volunteer force. 35,000 paramedics, EMTs, and first responders. These are the people, folks, on October 7th who were there, and they're still there. They're on the ground. They're helping in the darkest of places. Magen David Adom are the first to the scene, helping terror victims in the immediate aftermath of terror attacks. Just amazing work. Again, it's SaveLivesIsrael.com. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Magen David Adom, we are proud to have them as a sponsor for today's live stream. I strongly encourage you to check them out. Hey, you want to bless the people of Israel? We talk about that often here on the channel. Genesis 12:3. Fulfill that biblical mandate to bless Israel. Can't think of a better way to do it than through Magen David Adom, which is Israel's emergency medical system. Where else do you want to go? You want to bless Israel and help Israel? Go to Israel's emergency medical system. That's Magen David Adom. Can't think of a better way to do it. Check them out. SaveLivesIsrael.com. And folks, look, we talk about Syria. We're talking Lebanon, Hezbollah, that front, but it's an entire northern front, right? We've talked about the great northern war that I believe is coming, perhaps sooner rather than later, where Israel eventually will be forced to act against Hezbollah, the Iranian regime, in Syria and in southern Lebanon. That's a question not of if, but when. When you talk to Israeli military officials, as I have, that's what they say. Look, we know eventually we're going to have to go toe-to-toe in a major way with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been ramping up its attacks against Israel to the point in the month of May, there were over 1,000 attacks launched against Israel from southern Lebanon. It's simply unsustainable. You've got great groups like Magen David Adom who are stepping into the void and helping there. But look, eventually the residents of the north have to go home. Right now you can if Hezbollah is perched on that border. But next door in Syria, what Iran has wanted to do, and folks, I'm sad to say, they've made some headway in Syria, but not nearly what they have in Lebanon. They wanted to duplicate what they've established in Lebanon, which we see right now as a major thorn in Israel's side. What's being what's emanating from southern Lebanon every day. They've wanted to duplicate that in Syria with clearly not nearly that amount of success. But I will say that although Israel has essentially foiled Iran at every turn in Syria, carrying out hundreds of airstrikes in the past several years, pushing back Iranian forces, and Israel has inflicted great damage on Iran, left and right, no doubt. We'll talk about that more in a minute, inside Syria, in terms of pushing Iran back from the Golan, back from the Israel-Syria border, and also in terms of just completely decimating weapons shipments that the Iranian regime transits through Damascus and Aleppo international airports. Now, these weapons shipments come through, many times advanced precision-guided munitions, PGMs for short, and their ultimate destination, folks, is into the hands of, you guessed it, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Well, Israeli airstrikes have done a great job of decimating many of those weapon shipments, but some have gotten through. You don't have a 100% success rate there, clearly. But nonetheless, Israel still what it could have been compared to what it is. Those Israeli airstrikes have had a major, major impact in Syria. But Iran is still there. The ultimate goal for Israel would be to push Iran out of Syria altogether. And yet, Iranian forces remain in Syria. So again, not to the level, obviously, of southern Lebanon with Hezbollah, existential threat. But Syria, the goal of Iran certainly is to make the Syrian front an existential threat as well. And for Iran, look, the more rings to that ring of fire, the better. You can barrage Israel from Lebanon and Syria. So Israel clearly has said, look, this is unacceptable. We're on a collision course with you, Iran, in Syria. Israel says, we're not letting up. We're going to continue to strike you. And Iran says, we're not letting up. We're going to continue to try to establish a permanent beachhead, a foothold here in Syria. So what do you have? Again, collision course. We saw it again early this morning, folks. Here are the details of this latest Israeli strike in Syria. Israeli airstrikes around the Syrian city of Aleppo killed several people early this morning, including, and this is the key here, folks, an Iranian military advisor. Now, this is Syrian state media admitting as much, the Assad regime saying, yeah, Israel, as is its MO, did not acknowledge that it was behind the strikes, but 16 people killed, pretty major strike. And again, in Aleppo, which has been a major hub, obviously, Aleppo International Airport, as Israel has carried out more and more attacks in Damascus, Aleppo has become kind of an alternate route for those Iranian weapon shipments, which, by the way, they arrive from Iran in passenger planes, I mean, cargo planes, but also just commercial planes that you would have civilians on. Iran even stacks weapons into those planes as well and tries to deliver them through Damascus, but also through Aleppo. So the Aleppo as a location is not a surprise. Now, it was the first strike early this morning to kill an Iranian official since that fateful April 1st strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, which killed Mohammad Reza Zahedi, who was a top Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps official. In this case, early this morning, an Iranian military advisor who is unnamed was killed. What Syrian state media is saying is that it happened around the southeastern edge of Aleppo. And we do have the name, Saeed Abayar. Saeed Abayar was the Iranian military advisor who was killed. And that's all Iran said. Syria said a number of, quote, martyrs and some material losses occurred in this Israeli strike. Now, the last time we had an Iranian official killed in Syria, again, Mohammad Reza Zahedi, on April 1st. Folks, you know the story. Just to refresh your memories. April 13th. In the wake of that attack, Iran launches the first ever direct attack by the Iranian regime on Israel from Iranian soil. Over 300 projectiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drones launched at Israel. Again, from Iranian soil, not just through Iranian proxies. And by the way, they chipped in as well, and they fired projectiles too in that April 13th attack. But the bulk of it was directly from Iranian soil. And we all know Israel's response was not perhaps what many of us thought it would be, reacting with a strike in Isfahan, Iran. But perhaps Israel was wise there. There may be more beneath the surface that we don't know about that was involved. Certainly, the Biden administration was doing everything it could to tie Israel's hands. It did not want Israel to respond at all, just as right now it would not want Israel to strike Hezbollah in a major way, perhaps go into Lebanon on the ground to snuff out that Hezbollah threat, just as the Biden administration does not want Israel to continue with its campaign in Gaza to destroy Hamas. So the Biden administration is trying to tie Israel's hands in three ways: in Gaza, in Lebanon, and with Iran. It's a recipe for disaster, and it is dangerous not only for Israel's security, but for America's security, because it is emboldening the shared enemies of Israel and the United States. That's pretty clear. One of them was Mohammad Reza Zahedi. And again, Iran had an overwhelming response to his death. And also, look, an Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps hub running it out of the consulate in Damascus was also hit. So to say, and some people have said, oh, wow, now this Iranian military advisor was killed this morning in Aleppo. Does that mean Iran's going to launch directly from Iranian soil? You can never say never in this upside down time that we live in, when you can expect the unexpected, certainly in the Middle East. I would say in this case, I don't know that Iran would have those direct launches against Israel over the death of one military advisor, but you can expect some sort, I'm sure, of retaliation. And folks, that may very well come through just an increase in Hezbollah rockets being launched over the next few days. But I would find it unlikely that Iran would respond in an overwhelming fashion, an unprecedented fashion, like it did on April 1st in the wake of, or after April 1st, in the wake of Zahadi's death. But Iran will certainly have something to say about this, again, likely through Hezbollah. But there's also a wild card here. And I interviewed Israel's former Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, last week, and it aired on our show, Stakelbeck Tonight. Folks, if you like the newscast here on YouTube every day, you will love our nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight, airing every night on TBN, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air every night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'd love if you could check us out on the Stakelbeck Tonight show on TBN every night. But Naftali Bennett, my interview with him aired, and he said, I asked him pretty bluntly, yeah, Prime Minister, do you believe that Iran and Hezbollah were emboldened by what happened on April 13th? Meaning, look, Iran, again, launched over 300 projectiles, and Israel didn't have a major response. Essentially, Iran got away with it. Now, the silver lining there for Israel is some 99% of those incoming projectiles were downed in what was clearly a miracle. It was a miracle of God. A miracle. 99% of those projectiles, cruise, ballistic missiles, drones, shot down before they even reached Israeli airspace. But if you're Iran, you could say, well, we got away with it. We didn't pay a major price. Iran's nuclear facilities weren't struck in response, or there weren't major airstrikes in Tehran or some other. You get what I'm saying. They're still there. They're still kicking, and they're still plotting terror in a major way. They are not deterred. Let's just say that. So, yes, I think going forward, I don't think in this case, but I think going forward, if there are major Israeli strikes, perhaps yes, God forbid, but perhaps yes, we do see projectiles, rockets, missiles, drones launched from Iran proper. Again, was April 13th a game changer? And Bennett said he felt like they were emboldened in my interview with him on Stakelbeck Tonight. But I think that's a big question. Was April 13th a one-shot deal, or was Iran emboldened? And are they saying, look, this is the new normal. Now we're just going to launch whenever we see fit from Iran itself. Hundreds of ballistic missiles from Iran itself. And folks, I don't know about you, but I will never forget the images of Iranian missiles over the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Thankfully, again, 99% shot down, but it's a situation where, look, you can't get overconfident, needless to say, because next time it might not be 99%. And Iron Dome, of course, Israel's short-range missile defense system, has a 90% accuracy rate since it was unveiled a little over a decade ago on the battlefields. But you have David Sling, you have the Arrow missile defense system. But the big game changer, I think, for Israel is Iron Beam, that laser-based defense system that I can tell you, those in the Israeli defense establishment are, I don't want to say excited about, but very optimistic that Iron Beam could be a game changer. It's not as expensive as Iron Dome, and it's highly effective in the tests they've been running. I spoke to Yuval Steinitz, who's kind of the point man on that. He was actually on Stakelbeck tonight as well recently. So Iron Beam, the laser-based defense system, could be a game changer, folks. And Israel's going to need it because that Iranian ring of fire, and again, it could be coming from Iran itself now, was a threshold crossed on April 13th. But rockets, missiles, attack drones, tens upon thousands. I mean, whether it's Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Hornet's Nest in Syria, Gaza, obviously, Hamas's capabilities, Islamic Jihad's capabilities, severely diminished in terms of launching rockets since Israel's response in the wake of October 7th. But hey, they still got a few thousand, needless to say. So this was Iran's strategy, to surround Israel with a ring of fire on all sides and then launch in a coordinated effort. Now, Hamas went a little early, I think, on October 7th. And I believe that Hamas thought, well, everyone else is going to chip in now, and the ring of fire is going to ignite. It didn't quite happen. It ignited, but in a more limited fashion. Still deadly, not downplaying it. What's come out of the north, clearly, Hezbollah, it's unsustainable. Israel can't accept it for much longer. And the Houthis just yesterday fired, or this morning actually, fired another rocket at Eilat, the southernmost city in Israel. So it continues. But the Israeli missile defense X factor is what comes into play here, folks. And if and when Iron Beam is unveiled, you could have a massive game changer. I think everyone's kind of eagerly awaiting that. And, you know, it sounds like science fiction, but it ain't science fiction. It's the real deal. And with that Israeli ingenuity at the forefront of developing this advanced missile defense system, Iron Beam, you could expect some good things to happen for Israel. And they'll need it, again, very soon. But ultimately, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is Israel's shield. He's Israel's protector. He neither slumbers nor sleeps. I think we saw that on April 13th when we saw 99%. Folks, think about that. 99% of over 300 projectiles, ballistic cruise missiles, drones intercepted. Now, Israel had help on that night. The United States, Saudi Arabia, Jordan all helped with their missile defense systems chipping in to shoot down those projectiles. But folks, rarely do you have a success rate of perfection, especially when there was such a large volume of projectiles launched from Iran. So God is moving. He's in control. Do not be discouraged. Keep that in mind when we're sharing what are some heavy details today. Do not be discouraged. God Almighty is in control. He still sits on the throne. And I say it all the time, as the waves are crashing, the winds are roaring, you're in the boat, and Jesus is in the boat with you. Remember that. And you can have the peace that surpasses all understanding. And we're going to need it, folks, because we've got some, again, unprecedented events. I don't say that word lightly. I don't want to overuse the word unprecedented, but this is really unprecedented. And here, I can't say, sadly, this is unprecedented coming out of Turkey, because Turkey has become a major problem under the radical rule of Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Before we get into the suicide bombing plot directed from Turkey against Israel and thankfully broken up by Israeli authorities, before we dig into that, a quick refresher for you, the latest out of Turkey. Let's review. Since October 7th, Turkey has killed trade with Israel. Turkey's Erdogan has called Israel repeatedly a terrorist state, compared Israel to Nazis, compared Netanyahu to Hitler, called Netanyahu a vampire. This is only the beginning. referred to Hamas as holy warriors and martyrs and freedom fighters. Again, this is the leader of the 8th largest standing army in the world, a NATO member nation, the 2nd largest standing army in NATO, and he's engaging in this kind of rhetoric. A few weeks ago, he said that after Israel is done with Gaza, they're going to invade Turkey. These aren't, you could say these are the paranoid rantings and ravings of a madman, but the problem with that is it's all too real. And he wields tremendous power, obviously, in a pivotal nation, Turkey, which I believe is a prophetic player. Folks, I'm sad to say it because Turkey was a staunch ally of the United States. And yes, Israel, prior to 2002, when Erdogan came to power with his iron-fisted rule, he's stamped out most of his internal opposition inside Turkey. But I'm sad to say that whether it's under Erdogan or a future Turkish leader, it seems that things will continue to turn in this direction because I see a confederation shaping up. And the prophet Ezekiel lays it out pretty clearly. Funny name, the war of Gog and Magog, a confederation of nations that Ezekiel says will come against Israel in what he calls the latter days, Latter, the latter days. And I see Turkey, Russia, and Iran cleaving closer and closer together like they never have before. And clearly Iran and Turkey, tremendous animosity towards Israel. And clearly Russia showing more animosity towards Israel, as we've outlined here in the newscast over the months. And key point here, Russia and Iran with a very, very close military alliance now. So if Israel strikes Iran or Hezbollah, do you really think Russia is going to remain silent there? I'm not saying that Russia will get involved militarily. That's not what I'm saying. But certainly Russia would condemn Israel to the hilt. It would arm, as it is now, Iran and Hezbollah. It would support them. Again, I'm not saying Russia would intervene militarily in that showdown between Israel and Iran. But in the aftermath, I think all bets are off. I think an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, or Israel crushing Hezbollah, or an Israeli war with Iran, a limited kind of war it would probably be, but a missile war where Iran and Hezbollah take major, major lumps. And the Assad regime in Syria. Isaiah 17 talks about the destruction of Damascus. All of these kinds of events could be a precursor to Ezekiel 38 and 39. Why? Perhaps Ezekiel 38 and 39, the war of Gog and Magog, is a war of revenge. In Iran's view, we've been hit. Israel has hit us. They've hit us hard. We're embarrassed. Now we want revenge. We're getting a few of our best friends together, Turkey, Russia, Islamic nations, the Stans, former Soviet republics, and we are going to invade Israel in revenge. Now, this vengeance plot doesn't get very far. Spoiler alert, these armies perish on the mountains of Israel. When the God of Israel, who folks, I told you a minute ago, he's still in control. He still sits on the throne. He intervenes and shows himself to the world in a very public way for the entire world like he hasn't in 2,000 years. That's what's coming. So if you're getting despondent and discouraged about everything you see in the world right now, don't be, because God is a God of justice, and the devil will get his due, and his minions and these demonic forces coming against Israel will eventually pay the consequences. A little bit more in this plot, though. Israel's Shin Bet intelligence service announced today, I'm just reading this straight from my phone, Times of Israel, that it had foiled a recent attempt by Hamas to carry out a suicide bombing inside Israel. It was orchestrated by Hamas members who were based in Turkey. This happened on March 15th. A Palestinian, originally from the West Bank, we call Judea and Samaria, was detained over his involvement in the bombing plot. In December 2023, he was recruited by a Hamas operative living in Turkey, and he agreed to carry out a suicide bombing on behalf of Hamas, with the target said to be inside Israel. He took motorcycle lessons. He would have used a motorcycle in this suicide bombing. He received funds and instructions to carry out the bombing, all from Turkey. Where to collect the explosive device, all again from Turkey. Wow. Now, this is nothing new. Thank God, first of all, this plot was broken up. But number two, it is nothing new for Turkey to harbor Hamas operatives. I bring you Saleh al-Aruri, who was killed in the beginning of this year, a leading Hamas operative. He was killed in Lebanon, but for years he lived in, you guessed it, Turkey. Recep Erdogan is an open ally and supporter of Hamas. So you should not be shocked, folks. And we have a pretty smart audience here who gets it. So I'm pretty sure you're not shocked when you hear me say this, that Hamas plots are being launched from Turkey, and they have been for some time. So this is no shock, needless to say, and sad to say. So expect Turkey's anti-Israel bent to continue for some time to come. But last thoughts here on the Biden administration. I want to share Netanyahu's comments today. Now, if you're just joining us, we talked about this at the top. Last Friday, May 31st, Joe Biden said this war must end in Gaza. He demands that the war end. Quite a demand to make of another sovereign nation that's fighting for its very existence in the wake of the most horrific massacre of its people since the Holocaust. But I digress. Israeli officials from the Times of Israel here, I'm just reading it straight off my phone. I do not want to misquote. Israeli officials pushed back on Monday on elements of the hostage deal proposal presented by Joe Biden over the weekend. Biden said this was Israel's idea. Netanyahu said, no, there are gaps between this proposal and Israel's stance. And Netanyahu said the claim by Biden that we agreed to a ceasefire without our conditions being met is incorrect. What are those conditions? Destroying Hamas's military and civil governance capabilities, securing the release of all hostages, and ensuring that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel. Again, I repeat, destroy Hamas, release all the hostages, the Israeli hostage, and ensure that Gaza is no longer a threat to Israel. Pretty reasonable goals, I think, after what happened on October 7th and what happened for years before October 7th also. Netanyahu went on to say that the proposal that Biden presented is incomplete, and there are gaps between what Biden is saying and what Israel is saying. Who do you believe, folks? I know who I believe, considering this administration in D.C. right now. The war will stop in order to bring hostages back, and afterward we will hold discussions, Netanyahu said. So Netanyahu is willing to stop the war briefly if Israeli hostages will be released, but then he's starting it right back up. And he says correctly that, quote, Iran and all of our enemies are watching to see if we capitulate, if we surrender here, and if we cave. So I don't think he's going to do that. He is willing to pause the war so that hostages are released. But listen, folks, 4 more hostages today, tragically, were announced, confirmed dead. What I'm saying is this: can Hamas be trusted? I think that's a rhetorical question, right? No, Hamas can't be trusted to honor any kind of deal. So would Hamas, and just reading reports out of the region today, Hamas thinks they're in good position. They think they can wait this thing out. They see world pressure turning against Israel, world opinion, sadly, which is prophetic. We knew this was going to happen. But opinion turning against Israel, and Hamas feels pretty good and says, you know what? We can wait this thing out. Let's drag it out. Let's pay lip service to a potential deal, but not actually accept the deal. We won't actually honor the terms of the deal, but we'll just talk a good game, and we'll drag things out. And that's what we see right now. Now, the Biden administration is basically saying to Israel, just agree to a ceasefire and walk away and leave Hamas alive to fight another day. It's madness. And the Biden administration and Biden himself is calling on Hamas to take the deal. Since when does Hamas listen to any American leader, let alone Joe Biden? But we shall see, because the pressure is ramping up. Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State in Israel, meeting with Israeli officials. The pressure is ramping up on all sides. I can tell you, if Israel agrees to a deal, a premature ceasefire that leaves Hamas alive to fight another day, I mean, Netanyahu himself said it. The message that would send to Israel's enemies would be that it's open season. So I would not think that that's going to happen, but we're watching it very closely. And again, folks, relentless, and I do mean relentless pressure imposed upon Israel by the Biden administration, by Europe. Folks, closing thought here. Pray for Israel like never before. For the wisdom of Solomon among Israel's leaders, for spines of steel, and that they put faith not in man, but they put their faith and their trust in God, not in horses and chariots, but the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here.